Thank you very much, Mr. Dale. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship again, and particularly grateful to the Backbench Business Committee for granting me this important debate this morning, and especially grateful to colleagues who clearly have the same issues in their constituencies who have come along this morning. So, Mr. Dowd, to be able to get a timely appointment at your local surgery without too much hassle is something that every one of our constituents hugely values. General practice is the front door of the NHS, and all GPs, practice nurses, clinical pharmacists and the whole primary care team do an amazing job under enormous pressure, and I want to start this debate by expressing my profound gratitude to them. In parts of England, there were a third more GP appointments delivered between September and November 2021 compared with the same period in 2019. Yet, despite this, many of our constituents regularly tell us of the difficulties they have getting a timely appointment at their surgery. There is already strain on the system, which GPs and primary care staff are exercised about, and in addition, considerable variability in the numbers of GPs, practice nurses and direct patient care roles per 10,000 registered patients. I think there should be a recommendation as to how many patients a GP should have. I accept that different populations in different parts of the country will have different demands, and so a number of indicative levels would be required. We have requirements on the number of children that can be in a class, so why is it different for patients and GP practices? I've analysed the numbers of GPs, practice nurses and direct patient care staff per 10,000 registered patients in each of the 3 primary care networks that cover my constituency, and with one exception for GPs in one primary care network, the whole of my constituency has less GPs, practice nurses and direct patient care staff per 10,000 patients than the averages for England and the East of England. And from the plans that I've seen from my clinical commissioning group, the projected increases in primary care staff will not be enough to bring my constituency up to the average. And I'm told there are no future figures available for GP recruitment available from the CCG, because GP recruitment is left to individual practices. Now, we know as a country that we need to build more homes, and I want everyone to be decently housed. Too many people still don't have a decent home. We also know that as elected representatives that new housing development is often vigorously opposed by existing residents. That opposition does have some merit to it if the existing services in that area are already under strain and are going to be put under even greater strain. A constituent wrote to me on Saturday to say, and I quote, "Leighton Buzzard has expanded massively in the last 20 years. However, the investment in infrastructure and facilities has in no way kept pace with this. And access to healthcare," that was the issue she raised, healthcare, "is inadequate, leaving the GP surgeries under great pressure despite their best efforts. I dread to think what the situation will be when the massive building programme is completed." That was spot on. Everyone pays taxes, and those new residents will make their contribution, and so it is essential and only fair that the services in an area, as its population expands, rise to meet that growing population. In Norwich North, the seat of a minister who can't speak for herself today, I'm told that Wave 4B CCG funding will provide an extension for one local surgery, but this will only accommodate a small fraction of the population increase, and there is no provision being offered for another GP practice or through Section 106 money. In the Sherwood constituency, the constituency of a cabinet member, I understand that 6,000 new homes are planned for Hucknall, a town where GPs are already oversubscribed, and there is no commitment to a new Cabell Health Centre to meet the needs of existing and new residents. I have rarely found children without a school place to go to. However we plan for additional school capacity when massive new housing comes along, the system seems to work reasonably well, and the classrooms get built and the teachers employed to welcome those new children and give them a good quality education. That is not my experience with general practice capacity, and I represent an area that is due to have around 14,000 new homes built. which before those new residents arrive already has below average numbers of GPs and primary care staff? Yes, of course I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he raises a very important point about how there's the planning on education places, and actually what we need to be seeing from government and local authorities alike is a much more robust approach with developers, making sure that they're paying for what is actually required and not leaving it to the NHS and local communities to pick up the bill. So we need to see that strong lead from ministers and for them to be standing up for communities, not for developers.
Well, I completely agree with my right honourable friend and defer to his expertise on education, of course. I would add an extra thing to what he said, actually. There needs to be an element of retrospection, because many of those new housing estates have been rolled out in our constituencies now. So the new infrastructure levy can't just be going forward. There is an immediate deficit, which we also need to remedy. And I think the current system is broken, which is the reason I've been campaigning on this issue and have called this debate. Contributions from Section 106 funding or from the Community Infrastructure Levy often go to provide other facilities rather than for health. Current guidance states, and I quote, "It is helpful if the Director of Public Health is consulted on any planning applications, including at the pre-application stage, that are likely to have a significant impact on the health and well-being of the local population." I don't think it's helpful. I think it's absolutely essential and should be a requirement that should lead to a clear outcome of additional ring-fenced health funding to employ and accommodate the necessary GPs and practice nurses that the population of that area requires. Now, I have good support in my request for this. When I put this point to the Prime Minister on the 5th of January this year, he replied, "My honourable friend is completely right. We cannot build new homes without putting in the infrastructure to go with it." No higher authority could I quote, Minister. I would argue that no new infrastructure is more important than looking after the health of the existing and new population in an area. At the moment, the system is fragmented and uncertain, in that you might be lucky and be funded through Section 106 money, or you might be lucky and get it from Community Infrastructure Levy. Or you could again be lucky and get what you need from the Housing Infrastructure Fund. Again, if you're fortunate, your local authority might come to the rescue. Or it could be that Treasury funding to the Department of Health and Social Care will do the job. But my CCG tell me that capital funding from the Treasury for new general practice capacity appears too late to be of any use in making a sensible forward plan, and then disappears equally quickly. Yeah, of course I will.
Does he agree with me that, whilst developers do sometimes offer to create new premises for additional GP practice, that doesn't actually resolve the problem, because the shortage is of people, of qualified GPs. So even if you have brand new premises, if you don't have the doctors to see the patients, it doesn't solve the problem he's talking about.
Well, this is the benefit of having former members of the Cabinet in a debate like this, in that they know what they are talking about. And the Right Honourable Lady is completely right. We're talking about both capital and ongoing revenue funding. And those new residents come with a stream of tax revenue, their council tax and their income tax and the tax from their businesses that they will pay. So we're not asking for anything unreasonable. It's just about an equitable allocation in terms of where people actually live when there are big increases in a local population. In my local authority, there were proposals to build 4 health hubs. And the original commitment was that these would be built by the 31st of March 2020. And then by 2024, and we have one built, or being built, another progressing, and complete silence on the other 2. The funding was initially due to come from the Primary Care Infrastructure Fund, and then the Primary Care Transformation Fund, with the CCG and the local authority due to make contributions at various points. But none of these routes has led to the delivery of 2 much-needed health hubs in my constituency. So I propose there should be guaranteed primary care health funding for each 1,000 new homes allocated at the time of planning permission is granted and delivered as the new residents arrive, although, of course, smaller developments must also be catered for. The current capitation figures based on the Office of National Statistics population figures are always lagged, and therefore the infrastructure always comes too late, leaving unacceptable strain on local primary care services. We will, in the end, pay for the primary care services needed, but instead of always doing it too late, let's get ahead of the curve and stop the anxiety and upset which our constituents and primary care staff experience as a result. I also observe that the whole process is often shrouded in secrecy, with very little engagement with local members of Parliament and councillors. And we are the ones who feel the anger of our residents when these facilities arrive too late, but there is limited local accountability from those taking the decisions and a confused and uncertain national funding process. As I've said, we could learn from the way in which education funding is allocated to accommodate significant population growth. And I also recommend that the Prime Minister should urgently convene a cabinet subcommittee between the Treasury, the Department of Health and Social Care, and the Department of Levelling Up and Communities to deal with this issue once and for all. And I just repeat the point I said to the Right Honourable Lady for Chipping Barnet, that I understand the new infrastructure levy may come to our rescue, but if it just looks forward and doesn't deal with these vast new housing estates, 14,000 being built in my constituency, many thousands amongst the Honourable and Right Honourable members in this room, we will have let our constituents down. We are a country that generally does public administration well. We are better than this. We can fix this. And I implore the Minister to go back to his Secretary of State to have a focused cross-government effort led by the Prime Minister to get this right once and for all. Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd, and let me start with a huge thank you to all of my colleagues who've taken the time and the trouble to come here and be incredibly articulate on behalf of all of their communities, because it's clearly a common problem. We've heard from Keighley to Cornwall and all points in between, and I know there were colleagues from the North West and Oxfordshire and many other places who would have been here today to tell their story for their constituency who were not able to. I think as I reflect on what the Minister said, when he described the current system, I think I heard the word should a lot. And I think what I would say to him with the new system, the infrastructure levy, we must go to the word must, because the should simply has not happened and has not delivered in far too many cases. And I think at the heart of this, we can actually do it on the numbers, because I think there should be a safe limit for a GP and a primary care team in an area for their population. A younger, healthier population, you maybe can have a larger one. An older population where there's more disadvantage, you perhaps need a smaller patient load. But if we agree there is a safe number of patients that a primary care team of GPs and their practice staff can have, then we simply do it on the numbers. We raise up those that are under it, and when we are bringing in many more houses, then we must have the additional capacity, to meet those extra residents coming in to that area. So when he has that conversation with the Department of Health, I hope the infrastructure levy will provide all what we need. But could I please ask that he maybe gets the Treasury to that meeting as well? Because quite frankly, if the infrastructure levy does not do the full job, we are going to have to go back to the Treasury. We will pay for this eventually, but we just need to do it in a timely manner. And also, my final point, which is incredibly important, this mustn't just be future-looking, what he's about to bring in. We all have massive estates now which are under-provisioned. So he cannot just look to the future. He must deal with the current problem, which the existing system has let get to a terrible state.